Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock Central Time here in Omaha, so let's go ahead and get started. Wanted to cover a couple of things first before I introduce the person that I will be interviewing today, as well as a couple of fellow Right at Home franchise development teammates here. You are joining this webinar or listening to this webinar because you have interest in possibly wanting to purchase a Right at Home franchise. So just to lay a little bit of groundwork, Right at Home is an in-home care and assistance franchise. We provide care to people in their homes. Most likely you are either working in a corporate America job right now. You're thinking about purchasing a business, whether that's an independent business or a franchise, possibly a business like ours that's in-home care and assistance or another concept. But either way, we're hoping that after you listen to this webinar today, that you will have interest in inquiring about a Right at Home franchise. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items you guys will see at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A button. Go ahead and click on that button. I have the list of questions. If a question is asked, that pops up on my screen, so I will see it. I will make sure that that question is asked and answered throughout the course of the webinar, so don't be shy. Go ahead and ask a question. And then even at the end, if there's any final questions, go ahead and type them into that Q&A box, and we'll make sure that they get covered. So I'll go first. My name is Jen Chaney. I'm the Vice President of Franchise Development for Right at Home. Chuck, Trevor, John, if you guys want to go ahead and turn on your cameras, and I'll get you guys introduced as well. You may also see Micah on your screen. Micah is going to kind of be the Wizard of Oz here, the man behind the curtain helping us if we need anything throughout the course of the next hour as John and I visit. So as I mentioned, my name is Jen Chaney. I'm the Vice President of Franchise Development here for Right at Home, overseeing this glorious team of individuals and really just out there shouting from the rooftops the Right at Home franchise opportunity. Okay, so today I'm a word at John. We're going to save the best for last. I'm not going to introduce you just quite yet because you and I are going to be spending some time together over the course of the next hour. Just real quick, I'm going to have Chuck and Trevor introduce themselves. So in the event that you do inquire about owning a Right at Home franchise, you will be working with Chuck or Trevor through the education process. So Chuck, I'll let you go first.
Super. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for making time to get to know us and learn a little bit more about Right at Home. My name is Chuck Pretner. I'm one of the development directors along with Trevor. Really what my role is, it's a great role. I simply get to tell a great story and work with folks like yourself who I always say are people that get it. So I'm looking forward to talking to you further down the road. And again, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chuck.
And as Chuck mentioned, my name is Trevor Steenholt, and I do the exact same thing Chuck does. I'm his counterpart. It's always fun to work with people that are looking to take the next steps and maybe try something new and are looking to go the business ownership route. So thank you for everybody that's participating in this call and listening to this recording, and look forward to working with you someday.
Thanks, guys. Okay, John. So to those of you who are listening, so I'm going to be interviewing John. John, I would have you introduce yourself, but really that's kind of the premises of what we're going to be talking about throughout the entire conversation. So let's start in the very beginning. The reason why I'm interviewing John here is because he has quite the journey in his career, working in corporate America, being an independent business owner, being a Right at Home franchise owner, and then actually selling his Right at Home franchise. So hopefully his story is going to really relate to a lot of our listeners that have dialed in today or who are listening to this on a recorded basis. So John, why don't we start at the beginning? You were, way back when, we won't say how many years ago, you were working in corporate America. You eventually did transition to owning your own independent business. Then from there, you actually became a Right at Home franchisee. You were a successful franchisee for many years, transitioned out of that, and now you are in a different role. We will end with that. So let's start back in the beginning. Maybe just kind of tell your story as to where you started and how you came to be where you are today. I know that's a very That's a loaded question, and you could probably get really detailed, but just kind of walk through that with our listeners.
Yeah, obviously, when anybody gets out of college, they're looking for that job, and hopefully it's that corporate job. And so that's what I did. I was hired by a very large ice cream manufacturing company, and I worked there for well over 20 years. And that led to another opportunity where I actually transitioned to a different company and had the opportunity to actually buy part of a commercial food manufacturing business, which we purchased and spent almost 6 years there before it was purchased. And during that time, I guess I got the entrepreneur bug, right? It was one of those things where I didn't want to go back into corporate America at the time. I didn't want to start back. I had been my own boss for a little over 5 years, and I was kind of looking forward to transitioning. I'd also been working in a different industry, and sometimes you kind of look back and say, listen, I want more experience. I want to try something new and different. Didn't know what that was. But luckily my wife, our kids had reached an age where they didn't hang out with mom and dad as much. So she got a kind of a side gig of taking care of a World War II vet and a lady that had lived through a concentration camp, and just fell in love with care. So we had an opportunity to sell our business, our first business, and had some money to work with, and decided we wanted to get into home care. And that's when I started my due diligence, so to speak, looking for the company to partner with, or how I was going to enter that field when we moved home to Waco, Texas.
Right. Got it. Okay. So let's touch a little bit on some of the benefits and challenges you faced with each one of those roles prior to becoming a Right at Home franchisee.
Well, you mean as far as from my corporate job throughout type
Correct.
process?
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's, in corporate America, it's a different process. You normally have boss or group of bosses, and you're trying to hit that revenue goals and trying to hit those efficiency goals. And in food manufacturing, obviously quality goals. That all helped me step into my first purchase, which was a commercial food manufacturing, because I learned all that. But now I was the boss, right? I was the one doing the revenue goals and stuff. But you had two things. You had in food manufacturing, you have equipment and you have people. Now you always have customers, but people and equipment. And I decided when I sold that business, I needed to get out of the equipment. I was tired of equipment, and I decided, but I really enjoyed working with people. And so I went looking for something where I could work with people. And luckily, because of my wife's experience, we had a long discussion. We decided this was an ideal way to not only have employees, which are one side of that equation, but also have clients that you work with directly, which is the other side of the equation. Because in a food manufacturing business, you go to a building and you stay in that building all day long, right? Sun up to sundown. But in the home care business, you're in the community. And I wanted to do something that dealt with people and was in the community. And this just kind of hit on all cylinders.
Okay. So you've already answered my next question. So obviously we know the reason why you ended up choosing this type of business, because when you're looking to buy a business, you've got lots of options, whether that's, senior care, whether it's retail, whether it's so a very common thing that we hear at Right at Home, the people who choose to go into this type of business, their stories are very similar to yours. They want something to do something that matters, that makes them feel great at the end of the day, that it has an impact on their community. All the reasons why you chose to go with this type of business. So let's talk about even this type of business. There are options. There are other people out there that are doing the same thing that we are doing. So maybe just kind of walk through your due diligence on how you chose Right at Home versus the other individuals that are out there doing the same thing that we are doing.
Right. Well, when I was on basically the eve of my 50th birthday, this is when we're deciding to buy a Right at Home franchise. So I knew that there was a learning curve, right? So I knew I wanted to get with somebody that knew what was going on, that I wasn't going to go into the mom and pop world of home care and try to learn it from the ground up. I needed a guide, right? So I went looking for that guide when it came to home care. We were moving home to Waco, Texas. There are franchises out there that don't exist in Waco, and there's lots of choices. So I went looking, and I started looking kind of in that top 5, trying to find that right fit for me and my family. So we made the calls, we signed the documents, we were careful what we signed because I read everything to make sure that everything's good. But what really stuck out with Right at Home when we were dealing with was the people. I used to kid about it that the lady that was in the job that actually retired, that used to be in the world of Chuck and Trevor, talked me in and out of the business about 5 times because she wanted to make sure it was the right fit for me and my family, just like it was the right fit for them for me to join their family. And so when you start looking for that type of person, it wasn't hard sales. It wasn't, well, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. We had to make sure that the fit was right for both of us. You can also look up reputation. You know, Right at Home's reputation is stellar in the home care industry. There are some people that, you know, they're going to throw up shingles and they hope things come and go. And it just, when I started seeing those type of companies, it wasn't what I was going to do. So I spent a lot of time talking back and forth with Right at Home, reading everything I could about the industry, learning everything I could. They gave me lots of resources that I could look at too, that didn't necessarily directly to Right at Home, but directed towards home care, like senior certified advisor, certified senior advisor, sorry, and other things that I could get in there and really learn about the business and really learn what it meant to do home care, which really helped me make my decision moving forward.
Okay. So you've already, and then even moving on to the next question, this is the flow is working out perfectly because you're kind of setting me up for the next question that I'm about to ask you. So my next question was going to be around, how did you yourself prepare? I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of things here, but it's a combination of you work with somebody like Chuck or Trevor through the education process with Right at Home. You know, we're giving you a ton of materials, you know, to educate yourself. You know, we do a lot of, you know, presentations, you know, a business overview that tells all about Right at Home, just so you gain a better understanding of this business, as well as a review of the franchise disclosure document. Those are all the things that we help you with. But you yourself individually, how did you prepare yourself for owning a Right at Home franchise?
Well, first of all, when you get out of corporate America and you're getting into it, you got to understand franchise is not a bad word. And franchise just doesn't talk about hamburgers and hot dogs, right? That's what everybody thinks when they hear the word franchise. Franchise means knowledge, right? Franchise means systems, it means knowledge, it means intelligence that you can work with. So when I went out there and started asking questions, I was given some great resources. I became a certified senior advisor, which is completely separate to Right at Home, anybody can do. I was asked to call Right at Home franchisees just to talk it out. You know, this was part of the discovery process. But I spent a lot of time trying to understand the home care industry. Like everybody, we become intelligence through Google. And it's always a little scary because some of it's good information, some of it's bad information. But I was also directed to some trade magazines and some trade locations that made sense. Also with my state has a licensure process. So I was able to step out and look into licensure for doing in-home care and assistance. You just not anybody can throw it up and decide to be in home care because it's a very special business to get into and to do it the right way. So I spent a lot of time. And like I said, I mean, because I had sold my business and I was required to stay there for about 5 months, I spent a lot of time researching, kind of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to finally come to the decision to open my Right at Home.
Sure. Okay. And then that reminded me of something that you said earlier that I wanted to comment on. So we really do see this as this is a two-way street. You know, somebody like Jon, who inquired about owning a Right at Home franchise, working with somebody like Chuck or Trevor, who are Right at Home corporate employees, on this is all about Right at Home. So we're going to educate you about Right at Home. We want to make sure that you're the right fit for this business. And then you on your end, the buyer, the person who is looking to invest in their future and purchase a Right at Home franchise, it has to be right for you as well. So this is a two-way street. It has to be a mutual fit. And that's something that's very, very important to us. There have been times where we have to say, you know, perhaps this isn't the right fit for you. And that's okay. That's totally okay. Perhaps, this type of business would be a better business for you. However, those ones the same story that Jon has, where it's, like we're looking for something that has success with significance, we call it, something that matters, something that makes me feel good at the end of the day, build relationships in my community, all of the boxes are checking off, that's when we find those individuals, this is a great fit. This is somebody that I'd love to have as part of the Right at Home community here. So did want to touch on that. It's both ways here. It has to be a mutual fit and something that's very important to us. Another thing that Jon mentioned that I wanted to call out is what he called franchisee validation. So you will go through a step-by-step process with Chuck or Trevor that kind of walks you through different phases. Initial phone call where we talk about, kind of where you are in your life, what got you to our doorstep today. Then it's you fill out something called a personal profile that gives us a little bit of information about you. We review that together. Then we do something called a business overview. So it's just a Right at Home 101 that talks about the history of Right at Home, the types of services we provide, some of the things that we do for national strategic partnerships. I mean, it's everything from A to Z in a really easy to digest way of sharing this information with you about Right at Home. Then we get a little bit more detailed when we review the franchise disclosure document. That's the big, thick legal document that every franchise has, and Chuck and Trevor do a fantastic job of working with individuals to explain the franchise disclosure document, all of the different items, what's included in each. Then you reach a point called franchisee validation. And to me, this is one of the biggest steps in the process. And Jon, I kind of want to ask you what your experience was with franchisee validation. But to me, and from what I hear, from what the feedback that I receive from people that become a Right at Home franchisee validation is one of the most helpful and important parts of this process that Right at Home has incorporated. So what it is, you reach a certain point in the process where we say to you, we want you to pick up the phone and call some of our existing Right at Home franchise owners. Because at this point, you've been working with Chuck and Trevor, you learn all about Right at Home, you're doing your own research, but you're about to talk to Right at Home franchise owners directly, to hear stories directly from them on what a day in the life of a franchise owner with Right at Home is like. And we can't point you in any specific direction. There's a list of franchise owners that you're given, and it's the full list of everyone. We want you to call anybody who's listed. And you're going to hear some great things. You're going to hear some challenging things, but we want you to hear those things, good or bad. This has been since ownership. But at the end of the day, everybody who joins the Right at Home system, they're like, franchisee validation was huge for me. And it was really the point in the process where, we give you that opportunity to talk to our owners directly. So, Jon, maybe just take a minute to talk about how helpful franchisee validation was for you when you were doing your due diligence on owning a Right at Home franchise.
Yeah, it was funny because I was living in another state, and so it wasn't really even although they had a list I could call, she pretty much told me I could call anybody I wanted to. And so I was in Connecticut. I was opening in Texas. So I thought, well, I'll call Connecticut and Texas. So I called a wide variety, and they are not, and it's a two-way thing, right? Because when I did my validation calls to different people, you got the goods and you got the bads. You got the market in Connecticut, what it's like. I got the market in Texas, what it was like. But I really wasn't told who to call. I really wasn't given a profile of the owner. I wasn't told what they would do and not do. And what's unusual is on the other side, when I became an owner and I was that validation call, nobody called me and prepped me from corporate and said, oh, make sure you say something nice about us. It was truly what I thought at the time. And I was doing validation calls within 2 years, 3 years, and 5 years of owning Right at Home. They were calling me and asking me questions about opening up and what my experience was. And again, we didn't get a script. It was truly what we felt our experience was with Right at Home. And I felt I got that with my validation calls out to other owners. And I felt I did the same thing when other people called me who are now in the system that became owners of Right at Home.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Going to fast forward just a little bit. Let's move forward to, you've made the decision, you want to do this, you're officially a Right at Home franchise owner. maybe just talk a little bit about the initial support. Right after you sign your franchise agreement, our listeners, kind of give them a snapshot of what to expect right after that franchise agreement is signed, maybe up to, opening of business, and then a little bit after. And make sure that you touch on, because we have a fleet of right at home corporate employees here, that our jobs are to support our franchise owners. In excess of 80, 85 people, that our only jobs are to support you as franchise owners. So talk about your journey post franchise agreement signing to opening of business, a little bit after, and the right at home corporate support that you received.
Yeah, when we go in, as a business owner, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a business plan, which is what I did. And then you're going to step back and we're going to say, okay, how can I do this? How can I do this better than anybody's ever done? I want to just absolutely make right at home, my right at home, the biggest, strongest, most successful right at home in the system. I was told about support. I was told about engagement. But you know what? In the beginning, I just took the minimum and I went, okay, give me what I need to know. Thank you. Give me the books. I'll go learn it. Here I go. I made a mistake. And what my mistake is I didn't reach out and engage myself with the right at home system as deeply as I should have and could have. So I went about a year and a half and realized I don't think I'm going where I need to go. I need to be better. So then I started reaching out and started hearing the word engagement and started hearing about my coach and started hearing about support. So I started making more phone calls to support and talking to some tremendous people about, how should I do this? What's the best way to do this? And whether they had an answer for me right there, were able to send me the right resource, or quite honestly, connect me with an owner that was already in the system that was doing something successfully, or maybe had a bad experience. Hey, why don't you talk to so-and-so and get back with me? There is such a huge knowledge base in right at home, not only with corporate employees, but also with owners that have been in the system. So what I did wrong was I didn't engage properly in the beginning. What I did right was I started engaging along with the business plan and process and what I wanted to do. And that's when I really started seeing the growth and success of my business, was when I realized the whole reason I got into it was to not do it alone. But when I didn't use the resources like I should have in the beginning, that was my mistake. But I corrected that and it really started taking off.
Okay, awesome. So now that you mentioned that, it sounds to me like, because you had experience being an independent business owner, now you own a right at home franchise, which, that's not an independent business, it's a franchise. So maybe just kind of touch on, and you've already mentioned a couple of things, when you purchase a franchise, you're purchasing that, the systems, the processes, the procedures, the knowledge, it's all there. So you didn't really have that when you were an independent business owner. You didn't have that franchisor support. You didn't have that individual to reach out to engage with, to get the support that you needed. So maybe talk a little bit about, for our listeners who might be independent business owners thinking about purchasing a franchise, and the benefits of franchising itself.
Well, franchising is fantastic from a standpoint. If you don't take advantage of the knowledge base, you're making a mistake. If you don't take advantage of what's already been learned, right? Because that's one thing. When you're an independent business owner, you don't normally go to your competitors and say, how do I do this better? How do I get better than you, right? Because independent business owner doesn't have that option. I couldn't call other commercial food manufacturers and said, hey, can I come walk through your plant and see if you're doing a great job? Well, and when this business, you're in it together. You're in it with other people that are living the day-to-day exactly the way you are. And they can keep you from making the same mistakes that they made. They can keep you from going down the wrong road and making the wrong decisions. There's buying power in being a franchisee. There's knowledge power in being a franchisee. In today's business world, everybody's trying to put a business group together to talk things out. There's CEO groups and there's owner groups. But imagine a group of owners that gets together, and in right at home, we call them performance groups, and just talks out how it's working in your business. How is your business growing? What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? to really evaluate what's going on with your peers that are also right-at-home owners. So that has been exceptional. And then right-at-home still allows you to be creative as it comes to marketing creativity, relationship creativity, things that build a business in a way that is personalized, but they give you the tools to build it in a way that just makes sense.
Okay, you've already mentioned a couple of things here. You mentioned
Are you checking things off your list, Jen? Is
Yeah.
that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah, I've got a lot of check marks here. You're covering a lot of things that I wanted to make sure that we cover. You mentioned performance groups. Were there any other opportunities for you to, we've got something called, actual performance groups that franchise owners can become part of, but were there any other peer-to-peer groups that you were part of, or group phone calls? And maybe talk a little bit about your performance coach and the relationship that you have with your performance coach.
Yeah, well, the relationship I have is my performance coach and I look like brothers. We have the same haircut, but he was outstanding. In fact, we're friends today. It's just one of those things where he helped come in, evaluate what was going on, explain to us things that he's seen in the system. So he brought that peer experience from others and was able to help me with that. But the other things that we're able to do is you start making friends. You start finding friends in the system. So not only do you set a performance group, but you also have friends that you meet. You might meet them at the yearly event that we call home improvement that we go to, and you meet the home improvement and you have somebody you can reach out to because you spend a week at home improvement getting to know everybody, and then you make connections. In Texas, we put together a Texas group of owners to talk things out, maybe do some economies of scale marketing throughout our region and throughout our area to let people know who Right at Home is. So you have the opportunity to make a relationship with other owners to, bounce ideas off of, come up with strategies for growth of your business. Also accountability. That's the best thing about performance group. They keep you accountable, right? You say, I'm going to do this. And next time you see them, say, well, did you do it yet? And those kind of things are invaluable in the growth of your business. I have a friend that owned a home care company that she did it by herself, and she is smart as a whip, but she about killed herself trying to figure out how to do things. And obviously I couldn't, in the franchise world, I'm a right at home franchisee. I wasn't an independent, but she struggled and sold struggling because she just couldn't do it. And she told me if she was going to do it again, she would get in with an organization that could help her learn the process, because she spent about 3 or 4 years just trying to understand what home care was.
Sure.
And but Right at Home gives you those tools and gives you those opportunities to build relationships throughout our network, which that was invaluable.
Awesome. Okay, so you are no longer a Right at Home franchisee. So we're going to cover that a little bit here. So just to set the tone a little bit for those who are listening, when you inquire about franchise ownership with Right at Home, from the very beginning, we talk about your journey as a franchise owner. When Jon has mentioned his business plan, and I'm sure that we'll all hear this from Jon, I can almost promise you that in his business plan, it mentions something about, I want to own this business for X number of years, get to this point financially, and then I want to sell my business. And that's okay. Most people who do join the Right at Home system have a business plan in place where it says, after X amount of time, I want to exit this business. And that's okay. And that's something we talk about the end in the very beginning of your journey as a franchise owner. So that's the path that Jon was on. And he followed his business plan, and he made the decision to sell his business. So maybe talk to the audience here a little bit about how you came to that decision and maybe the process by which you sold your business and where you are today.
Yeah, in my business plan, I was going to sell the business in 5 years. That was the plan. We bought in 2012. I was going to sell in 5 years. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. But to be quite honest with you, it went fast, and I really enjoyed what was going on. And right at about 6.5 years, I went, I've kind of jumped out of my business plan. What are we going to do? Because, my parents were getting older. My wife's parents were getting older. That's one of the reasons we're going to sell after 5 years, to kind of focus on them, focus on some other things. And because my wife was very involved in the business with me. It was reaching a point where it was time possibly leave, but you kind of, you have to determine if you're going to fall in love with your business, or just love your business. And we loved our business. We hated leaving it. We hated leaving the people, the relationships, everybody we got to know over the years. My team had won quite a few awards through Right at Home because we were hitting milestones that we needed to hit. But I decided I needed to stick to my business plan. So we put it up for sale. And when a very short amount of time, we were blessed with an owner that has come in and really taken our business to even its next level because he really did his research and got in there. So I was able to find an owner a new owner that's really done a great job and continues to in our Right Home system, which is the only way I would have felt good transitioning out.
Great. And where are you today in your career?
Gosh, Jen, funny you should say. I actually reached out to Right at Home after I sold and said, listen, if you ever have a need for an old owner, let me know. So I was blessed when Margaret Haynes, our CEO, reached out and said, listen, let's kind of talk it out a bit. We're looking at doing some corporate owned processes to kind of support our network. And we'd love for you to maybe consider joining Right at Home. So I've since joined Right at Home Corporate. And what's unusual about that, I talked about corporate America. I'm now back in corporate America. But the neat thing about what I've seen that so many have never seen is you see the people on both sides of the fence, right? I saw them on the franchisee facing fence, which is they're great people. But what was neat is when I went on the other side of the fence, they're the same great people. But now I get to work with them on a corporate level rather than just as a franchisee. So it's been really quite a transition and quite a change.
Awesome. Okay, so from your perspective, overseeing corporate owned operations, I just want your take on where you see the in-home care and assistance industry, where you see it 10 years from now. What's the opportunity? The people that are listening, what's the opportunity for them right now versus over the course of the next 10 years and how this business will evolve and grow?
Well, and I probably have people that are technology folks online that may disagree with me, but I think there's always got to be a human touch. There's never going to be a time where care is going to be a 100% robotic. Now, when I say that, it's one of those things where maybe 100 years from now, they can look at me and say, John, you were wrong. But right now and in the near future, it is very much a caring touch business. It's people caring for people. Now we can add in a little bit of remote caring and remote touch. We've learned that through the pandemic, right? But what are people aching for right now? They're aching for people interactions, right? Aching for relational interactions. And that's what our clients would always want is people working with people, because that's the generations we're taking care of right now. So yeah, I'm one of those, I'm a die-hard, we need caregivers working directly with seniors and other adults, possibly adults with special needs, because that's the type of business we're in, and that's the type of business we need to continue to promote and build. And I've seen nothing but opportunity in the markets we're in, continue to grow, the demand continues to grow, and I don't see it stopping. We may get some new bells and whistles and some new tools, but for the most part, right now, in-home care and personal assistance is not going away, and it's something that needs to continue as we care for our older adults, and as I very quickly move towards the older adult realm, as the rest of us do.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So, of other businesses like ours that are in the same sector of in-home care and assistance, in your opinion, what sets Right at Home apart from being an industry leader? So whether that's the support that we provide, whether that's, the exclusive partnerships that we have, in your opinion, people who are out there shopping around, why should they choose a Right at Home business? And really what sets us apart from the rest?
Well, the first thing you'll learn is Right at Home's not going to knock any of their competitors, right? Because if you're going to have competitors, you want strong competitors, because that rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah.
But you want to be on the one that is the leader. And Right at Home, I feel, is constantly innovating, constantly looking for ways to change, to adjust, to move the needle on care, looking for ways to partner with other companies, looking for ways to expand offerings, better training, better processes, better people. And I think continuing to do that, realizing that this is a people business. So you have to invest in your people from beginning to end to get where, again, anybody can add in a tablet or a computer or an app or whatever in the process. But it's the people that's going to make this thing work. And so they're constantly looking for ways to elevate the people, to bring in, whether it's training, whether it's understanding, whether it's conversation that's directly people oriented. Right at Home looks for the innovative things to do in its industry and doesn't settle for, let's just crank out franchisees, let's just crank out offices. And so it's from front to back, that's what they've done to this point.
Yes.
Over 25 years.
Yes. Okay, awesome. I'm getting close to the end of my list of topics that I wanted to make sure to cover here. But before I ask these last couple of questions, just a reminder to those of you that are listening, you still have the opportunity to ask a question and type it in that Q&A box, and I'll keep watching here and make sure that those questions are covered. So John, next question for you. A lot of people, I think most individuals who invest in their own business, whether that's an independent business or a franchise, there is a fear. They're scared of the unknowns, and there's no guarantees. And do I take the plunge and buy a business? And do I start from scratch? And should I invest in a franchise? So maybe just talk about some of the fears that you had when you purchased your Right at Home business, and maybe just in general, being in the shoes of the individuals that are listening right now that may be thinking about purchasing a Right at Home franchise. Maybe some things that would ease their fears, and some things that that they'll need to overcome that you can just recommend from your own perspective, how you got through those fears on your own.
Well, and it's tough because everybody has to make their own decision, right? Their own decision, because what you're doing is you're relying on yourself and your abilities. You're relying on your ability to grow a business, in my case, from the ground up, because there wasn't a Right at Home in the area. So you may be as basic as, gosh, I hope we can pay our electric bill and eat while we're trying to build a business. But Right at Home helps you decide through a pretty in-depth process. The kind of explains to you how much is it going to cost, and how much time, and how much experience we have in the growth. And if you do it according to the message, according to the process that's laid out, you increase your chances of success. But obviously, as anybody knows, you sit down at a certain age, you're going to decide to do it. There's always a little bit of risk involved. But I think if you sit down and really look at the detail for a business like this, and really work on the process in a way with the support that you get, then you have a better chance for success. I know I did, and I wish I could show you graphically the difference between not engaged and engaged, and the difference between doing exactly what you're told to do and not doing what you're exactly told to do. Because I think you'll find that paying attention to the detail and what you were supposed to learn will give you success. But it's tough to take the plunge. But the neat thing about home care, it wasn't one of those that if I failed would completely sink me, right? It's not like going out and building a $3 million building and saying, I have this $3 million building I now have to pay for, or promising to expand to 5 $2 million locations over 5 years, which some franchise processes require. This was a low entry cost, a lower than normal worry as far as what the long-term cost was. And there's some success in doing this business from experience that you can look at and say, okay, if I can at least be average, I can be successful. If I'm below average, I can be successful. But you have to decide for yourself whether or not you're willing to take the risk. And that's part of being an entrepreneur. That's part of stepping out and trying things on your own.
Yes.
And everybody has their own story of why they would do it and why they wouldn't do it, or whatever it might be.
Yep. Okay, and then something that you mentioned because there wasn't a ride at home in the area. So what he is referring to is at any given time, we have a list of active resale opportunities. So these are franchise owners who are selling their existing business. So if you inquire about a ride at home franchise, there may be an opportunity for you, if that's something of interest to you, to purchase one of our resale opportunities. And you would enter the ride at home system by purchasing that open and operating business, versus the other option, which is what Jon did, which is started a territory from scratch. We purchased a territory, he opened his office, and he built it from the ground up. So at any given time, we've got an inventory of active resales, and you can consult with Chuck or Trevor when you inquire to see if there are any active resale opportunities in your area, if that's something of interest to you. Okay. And then engagement, I wanted to touch on that finally. So this is something that you mentioned multiple times, Jon, and this is something that we have seen as right at home corporate employees. When you look at a list of all of our franchise owners, the franchise owners that we see that are just absolutely thriving, they're growing their business, they're like seeing the results, they're working with their coach. Those are the ones that are fully engaged. The franchise owners that we see that may be struggling a little bit, we can see that they're not fully engaged with their engagement team. So that really touches on, so Jon mentioned his performance coach and this great relationship that he had with his coach, but there's an overall engagement team that works with that performance coach. So it's a performance coach, it's a business operations coordinator, and it's an online marketing specialist. So you have a team of individuals who work in your area to help and support you, not just the coach, but that makes up your engagement team. And wherever you purchase your Right at Home franchise, you will have an engagement team that you work with to help you and support you on your journey as a franchise owner, in addition to everybody else that works here at the corporate headquarters here in Omaha.
Right, and Jen, it's not a one size fits all. If you're good with accounting, you don't need to push your coach for accounting help. If you're good with sales, you don't need to push for sales help. So you can kind of pick and choose what you need the most help with, and they're really good about tailoring your plan to help you.
That's right. That's a good point. Okay, I'm looking through my list here, and I believe that I have covered all of the topics that I wanted to cover. Is there anything else that I didn't mention, Jon, that you would like to mention to our listeners?
No, I think it's a business that does take passion and compassion to really get into. It's a business that you will just absolutely enjoy and love, but also drive you crazy as you try to be the best you can be for the people you care for and the employees that you employ. Yep. But it is extremely rewarding, and I enjoy it every day now, and I enjoyed it the 7 years I owned a Right at Home.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Jon, and your time today. And I'm looking at the question box, and actually I just got a question. So let me read it out loud to the group here. How do owners deal with a trade area that is mostly rural? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Jon?
You bet. I had a very large territory in Central Texas that was very rural. I had a center, which was Waco, and then everything else is rural, right? I mean, I think it was, about a 2-hour drive to go from one end of my territory to the other. So what we started, we did a rural program. We found caregivers that lived out in rural areas, good, strong people that could be good, strong caregivers. We didn't ask them to come to the office. They're actually going to a client that may be living in the same community or the same area that they live in. It does take management, takes communication. We do have fantastic tools that allow for better communication. We would actually go on site closer to the house. Maybe it's an hour away to the little town they live in. We'd interview in that little town, get them as part of an employee, sign them up on the system, get clients in their area, and then we would plug those caregivers close to the clients in their rural areas. So you find clients and caregivers in those rural areas, and that's how you build your program. And we were able to do that successfully in some of the outlying areas that we had.
Awesome. And then I wanted to mention, that was a great answer, Jon. And just know that in the event that you are working with Chuck or Trevor and you have that question, when you come to the point of franchisee validation, as I mentioned, Chuck and Trevor can't tell you, hey, call these specific franchise owners. It's just call any of them. However, if you have a specific request like, hey, if you're working with Trevor, I would really love to visit with a franchise owner that, has a territory that's relatively, a rural territory, versus, a territory owner that is owning and operating a business in the heart of, Chicago. That would be different than the territory that Jon had in Waco that he just described. So Chuck or Trevor will be able to introduce you to franchise owners that would be a good owner to talk to with possibly, a territory that's more rural in setting than, a busy territory or metropolis like Chicago. Okay, that's a great question. Okay, I think that we have covered everything, Jon. I don't see any other questions coming into the question and answer board here. So I'm going to tie things up here. I want to end by saying thank you so much, Jon, for doing this. Hopefully our listeners found this incredibly helpful. I enjoy doing these webinars. I thought it was a great conversation and great discussion. So much appreciated. I thank you for taking the time to do this today.
Thank you.
Yep. And thanks, Micah, in the background for kind of running things behind the scenes. And I do believe for those of you that are listening, you will receive a recording of this webinar that you will be able to watch in the future if you'd like to watch it again. And please know you can contact us regarding any questions that you have. Chuck or Trevor would be happy to work with you. Even if you just want to get an idea of what the process looks like, and maybe you're thinking about doing this in the future, whether that's now or a couple of years from now, we would still love to talk. So thanks to everyone who has attended today. And if you're listening on a recorded basis, thank you for that as well. Everybody have a great day.